take my meds this morning with me while I tell you about how the process to get on the transplant list is like. I'm super nauseous, so I'm gonna have to take a couple breaks this morning taking my meds, but I have all of, let me show you these first before I start taking them so you can see how many I have. So those are all my post-transplant medications. Those are just my morning ones. I have about half that amount that I have to take every night as well. So, first off, you get your, you have the disease and you're monitoring it. When this disease gets far enough, this is going to be different probably per organ. I have a heart and lung, double lung, so mine might be different than say a liver or a pancreas or a kidney, but specific to heart lung transplants, you have a disease, you have it monitored, and you are eventually referred to a heart failure or pulmonologist, either one or both. And you continue to monitor until they decide it's bad enough that you need to start considering a transplant. At this point, you get referred to a transplant clinic or transplant doctor, transplant pulmonologist, transplant heart or cardiologist, regardless. And they do a consult on you. Now, when you have this consult, it's kind of just them agreeing that you also need a transplant sooner rather than later. And this is not always the case. A lot of times people go into this consult and they will say, yes, you need a transplant, but it's not quite time yet. So once the transplant doctor decides that you do need a transplant sooner rather than later, they set up testing week. Testing week is a literal full week of just testing. Including labs, I believe I had 59 tests. Not including labs, I think it was like 34. So I mean, almost half was just blood work. It was a lot of blood. But there's a lot of testing also that goes into this. But they need to make sure that A, you are sick enough that you need this transplant, that it's, even if you know you need a transplant, you might not need it quite yet. Like, you could even be really bad, but a transplant isn't forever. So like, there's kind of a time limit-ish. It's difficult to explain once you get a transplant also. So they want to make sure that the timing is good. But they also want to make sure you're not too sick to get a transplant and that you actually recover. So during testing week, again, specific to heart-lung, you have a slew of, and I'm going to miss some when I'm listing these off because there were so many. This was back in September that I had my testing week. So I forgot most of it also. I could probably look back and find some of them. And like, if people are really curious exactly what tests we all do, I'll go back and look at them, but otherwise I'm just gonna list off what I remember. So I had an echocardiogram. I'm not going to explain what each of these tests are like in detail unless I'm asked. But so I had an echocardiogram, an EKG, a right heart catheterization, and there's a specific name, but an ultrasound of my neck, wrists / elbows, and ankles to check arteries. An esophageal something. They put a tube down my nose. First was like a huge one, and you have to do like a swallow test essentially in clinic, and they'll send you home with a smaller tube down your nose, throat area that has to stay there for 24 hours. That's measuring your acid reflux mainly. I had a chest CT, multiple chest x-rays, PFTs, which are pulmonary function tests. I still do those. Multiple 6-minute walk test. There was more, and I can't remember off the top of my head what they were. But again, there was over 30 non-invasive. Some of them were invasive, like a heart cath is an invasive test, but most of them were invasive. Also, if you're not 30, so the older you are, the more testing you have. Also, I didn't have to do a mammogram or a colonoscopy. Most people do. I'm glad I didn't have to do them. However, I kind of disagree that I probably should have had them done, but regardless. And then after this, the transplant team or teams, in my case there's 2 because I had a multi-organ, and each organ has their own team. And they meet and they decide if you need a transplant right now. So 5% are listed immediately, roughly, rough numbers. 5% they decide are too sick, that they wouldn't heal well or wouldn't recover well. And then 90% they kind of just tell you that they're gonna keep monitoring you, but they're gonna wait and see, which is the most common. I was in the first 5% where they got all my testing back, and they were like, we need to list you right now. So I was listed on October 10th, 2024. They also test like your antibodies and your blood test. Oh, so the labs that you have, these labs test for, generic things like your CBC, your BMP, all of your red blood cells, your white blood cells, normal testing. But they also test for, it's not nicotine, but it's like it starts with a C, to make sure that you're not smoking, because you cannot have any nicotine in your system. You need to be serious about wanting a transplant, and that involves, not smoking, not drinking, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, or as healthy as you can. So they make sure your blood test ensures that you make sure you're not smoking. They also test all of your liver enzymes to make sure you haven't had a single drink. So the first lab I had, I didn't know this was a requirement because I thought it was only for livers. And I wasn't a heavy drinker, but my brother was really close to the hospital, so the night before my consult, I had a single drink with my brother. And obviously they saw that and they were like, but I was honest with them too. And they're like, okay, well from here on out, 0 tolerance. And so I haven't had a single drink since then. But so they test to make sure that as well. You get listed. You have monthly blood work to make sure you're still maintaining a healthy lifestyle. And then we kind of just monitor until you get the call. And my call was on January 1st, and I can go into a whole detail of like how to prepare for that and what the call entails, and then like my meds, everything so far that I've experienced post-transplant. And what else is to come. So if you have any more questions, feel free to message or leave a comment, and I will be sure to answer them. Bye, friends.